Happy New Year, everyone. And we're going to start off the new year because we've got actually two storm systems that will be impacting weather probably over the next 10 days. And will one of them break the snow drought? Well, we'll find out. Maybe. That's coming right up on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. It'll come in handy if when we get this winter weather when we get it. The link is about to be pinned to the top of the chat board, and it's also on the descriptor to this video. We want to let you know that Tempest is an affiliate of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. If you do decide to make any purchases from the website, because they do have all sorts of weather gadgets and gizmos and smart weather fashion, use the coupon code I want a weather station. And if you do, you will get
10% off in spite of the fact that we're in a new year, 2024. It is basically the same as in 2023. Use the coupon code I want a weather station and you will get that same 10%
off.
Yes.
All right. Happy New Year. And hope your my New Year was perfect. I just went to bed at 10 o'clock. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we stayed up. One of the annoying things is I have one of these atomic clocks, and when you watch the television coverage of the ushering in of the new year, you quickly discover that in some cases, like for example CNN, they were running like 33 seconds behind the actual occurrence of the new year. So, I'm looking at the clock. The clock says 12 midnight. And I look over and I'm seeing Anderson Cooper, and I don't know what he does exactly for a living. the other guy.
I don't know whoever it was you're talking about.
All I know is that Anderson Cooper and this other guy last night, from like 8 o'clock onward, every hour they kept having a belt or a snort. I mean, I guess that's their way of.
I find those shows honestly so boring.
Yeah, the funny thing is, though, I mean, like a quick flick of the dial, back in the day, you and I, when we watched as young kids, we'd watch coverage and we'd watch Guy Lombardo, and like 3 or 4 minutes before the new year, they'd flick to Times Square and they'd have a veteran newscaster, like let's say Ben Grauer at NBC, describing all the events that took place over the past 365 days and counting down second by second, watching the ball slowly descend or whatever. And like, here it is, like, a minute and a half before the new year rings in, I flicked over to CBS and I'm watching Lonnie Quinn. And he's standing over what looks to be a gigantic pizza and having a guy describing the contents of the pizza. And I'm saying, this is how you.
Aren't you glad? Are you not? Aren't you glad you're not part of that anymore? I mean, would I ever ask you to stand in front of a big pizza and tell us what is in this big pizza?
David Schwartz, by the way, Guy Lombardo showing your age there. I'm proud of it, David. I mean, I can say without wear like a badge of honor, and I think Joe can too, that back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, television and the world overall was a lot more logical than what we have out there tonight or what we have out there today. I don't understand what goes on out there.
Because what goes on out there is crap, and what we are is alternative, high-level, intelligent broadcasting,
right?
Which we are going to go into right now, are we not?
We're into already, Joe. It's the first day of the new year, and already we're into what I refer to as agita meteorology. And for those of you who are not Italian, agita is like when you get
angina.
And when I looked at the maps this morning, and I took the laptop over to Renata, who was preparing a absolutely delicious New Year's dinner today for myself, for her, and all of the kids. We had everybody over this afternoon, and I showed her. I said, "Well, look at this." And this was like at 11 o'clock this morning. I'm showing her the GFS. And I said, remember that big storm that they were promoting? Everybody was getting all excited about? And the 12Z GFS, right, as you're well aware, Joe,
And the
right on,
18Z brought it right back to be consistent
right
with
back.
weather. So, but the
And
thing
last
is,
night,
I did
and
not.
last,
I didn't look at it that when I looked at it. I didn't look at that look at it that way. I thoroughly expected that there was going to be a hiccup run because it always is. So I
but but if you looked at last night's zero Z European run, the European, whereas the GFS was bringing this whole mass into our area, the GFS, the European was saying, well, it's going to come, it'll be
and
nearby to us, but
then
we're not going to get the work. It was like, gee, it looks like it's almost trying to suggest that it might even try to miss us. And then when I saw the GFS 12Z this morning, I said, look at that. Look at that. The GFS is following along the same lines of last night's zero Z European run, and now I'm fully expecting the European now to push the whole thing out. And what does the European do? The European said, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm bringing it back in now."
look, these are
And
all logical hiccups, and I don't think there is any with that none of the hiccups are surprising me. I think we're still at this point where we have to, sort of, the takeaway is, yes, there is going to be a storm system. Yes, it's probably going to be producing snows for somebody from Virginia to southern New England. And there's really not much more we can say at this stage in terms of anything that what most people want to know is, oh, how much. That, to me, that is a question that at the earliest we could get to is maybe Wednesday evening, and then maybe we could put it down in some form of forecast wise along about Thursday, because right now it's just about
exactly.
moving chess pieces. However, I think it's important to realize that there has been, I think, I don't care, the thing that really bugs me, that's really was bugging me today, was seeing posts from people saying, oh, well, I don't believe this because the run is going to change. The next run is going to change. Of course, it's going to change. It always changes. But the takeaway is that the models. I think it's been remarkable that since Friday, 4 days now, 4 days on every run we've seen, not only seen this storm system, but there has been sort of this lockstep between the GFS, the European, and the Canadian models. So when that happens, that tells you that there's you can have a high degree of confidence that something is going to happen. What that something is, I don't know yet, but I'm kind of convinced at this point there's probably that there is going to be some snow. I hope that's not the kiss of death, but I'm kind of convinced that there is going to be some accumulating snow that maybe once and for all we can put an end to the it's never going to snow again mantra, which is just insane. Okay, I want that to stop, and then we could go forward if we do get snowfall to watch it all wash away from a big rain and windstorm 2 days later.
This is the thing that, and I agree with you on, is the fact that I almost wish that we did not have models that go out 384 hours and ensemble that ensemble condition to go all the way out to like 800 hours. I wish we didn't have that. I wish all the models were just like the NAM and didn't go any further than 84 hours because, as you just mentioned a few minutes ago, Joe, you really are not going to know with any surety or certainty about these events until we get within at least 84 hours, which would be Wednesday night, the 0Z run Wednesday night,
Right.
or the Thursday 12Z run. Then when you look at those model runs, you can say, okay, we're now close enough. There's enough data coming into the data sets that are going to be taken by or chewed on by the supercomputers to give us a fairly reasonable estimate or guesstimate as to what is going to transpire over the weekend. Until then, these changes in the position and the strength of these storm systems for later in the week and into the weekend is just, as I said yesterday, the algorithms, it's mathematical guesswork by the computers trying to undertake, an idea as to where these things are going. And again, don't forget, we have not one but two different systems ahead of the weekend system that could play a role in where exactly this storm is going to track.
Right,
So,
right, and exactly. So let's put it together. I thought maybe one of the first things that we should look at is the fact that the driver of this is going to be the higher pressures that are going to be building in southeastern Canada to funnel down cold air into the northeast and down into the mid-Atlantic states. And that is because if we take a look at the NAO index, the North Atlantic Oscillation, the Greenland block, quote unquote, because it's not always a block, but in this instance, the NAO is on a track to go negative starting today. And it will get down to a little over one standard deviation negative uh, by the time we get to the weekend. So this is timing in because that negative NAO is what's going to hold the higher pressures up into eastern Canada. So then the question then becomes if that NAO winds up being more negative, in other words, if it's stronger, if those pressures are even higher, that is where you can have too much of a good thing if you're a winter weather lover, because that's going to wind up, you know, where your big snows are going to be if that's the case?
North
Delaware,
Carolina.
well, Virginia, Delaware, the Delmarva Peninsula, Maryland, maybe down into North Carolina, and probably back to me. So you want to see it negative, but you don't want it to get off the wall negative. So as long as it's in this sort of -1 to maybe -1.5 range, I think that probably favors a storm to make a far enough northern track before it starts to get shoved out to the east. But if we start to see, and it's probably not likely that it's going to be much different here because we're so close in terms of the date. I mean, we're only 5 days. We're 5 days away here, so I can't imagine it's going to be that far off. So as long as we're no more than say 1.5 standard deviations from the mean, I think that the models have a pretty good idea of how this is going to wind up. And by the way, it is also forecast to stay negative, although it comes off that low. And I noticed somebody on the chat board, I'm sorry, whoever it was, you kind of passed by, so I can't find you again. Credit you for this question. It says, well, if the NAO is negative, then how come, why maybe the next storm will wind up coming further south? Well, just because the NAO is negative doesn't necessarily mean a storm can't go to the Great Lakes. That's happened many times. And so there's other stuff that's going on in the atmosphere, and the trough that's going to set up for the second system is going to be further west. So the NAO doesn't really have a whole lot of impact other than the fact that it's probably going to wind up being a major storm by the time it gets up to the lakes. I mean, at least that's the way I'm seeing it. But this is probably, I think, the most important factor with this system that's coming up for this coming weekend.
And it's interesting to point out that if you're looking at or trying to get some clarity out of this, I mean, the first couple of systems that will be rolling through over the course of this week seem to make a miss of our area. It's the one that's over the weekend that's going to determine whether or not we're going to finally break the snow drought, whether or not we're going to get a considerable amount of precipitation. Actually, Joe, to me, it doesn't look like, even if it were to hit us straight on, the system for, let's say, Saturday night, Sunday, it doesn't look like it's going to be a tremendous amount of precipitation. It might be something on the order of about an inch liquid precip. So if we get snow out of that, that's 10 inches. But then again, do we get snow, and does that system even come far enough north to get into our area? And as you pointed out yesterday, even if we do get snow over the weekend, all of you snow lovers are not going to be too happy with this, because there's another system close on the heels of that weekend system that probably is going to go up to the Great Lakes and pull up warm air and pretty much erase a lot of that snow by
if not all
the early part of next week.
Well, and I know the European. I didn't look. I think I did check it earlier. The European kind of implies that there might be a front end, a really fast front end thumping for somebody before it goes over to rain anyway, and rain with a screaming southeast wind the way it seems to be setting up, unless we're starting to play games with inversions, whether it mixes down or not. But
and you see,
that's not for today.
And this is where rumors start now, right? Here's what I said. This is exactly what I said. I said, I frankly don't think there's going to be an overabundance of moisture with the weekend system, maybe an inch of liquid, which if it were to translate into snow would be 10 inches. And here Cantino goes on the chat board and says, well, Joe Rayo's saying 10 inches possible.
Well, you walked into that one.
I did walk into that
You
one.
walked into that one. You notice I did not walk into that one. You
Yeah,
walked into that one.
exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Yeah, Joe Ray, I heard him just now. He said 10 inches for next.
All right. You
Yeah.
know what, Joe? It's 7:40, 7:50. I think it's time for you to ring the bell.
All right, I'm going to ring the bell. Ring the bell. Bell ring. There
Yes,
it
thank you
is.
for those of you who hit the like button.
443 people.
Yes,
I
I know,
find that
because they
more.
want us to talk about weather, and so at which we are.
Yes.
So we got over 100 likes already. Thank you for the likes. If you like the show, hit the like button. If you like the show, subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and usually we're off Fridays and Saturdays, but I think we'll probably, the way things are looking, we'll probably be on Friday or Saturday or possibly both. Um, WPC, Joe, for the first time, I have been waiting since November to pull this map up. This is their long range snow forecast probability. I'm going to make it simple because they have it as a quarter of an inch of liquid equivalent of snow or sleet. You know, by the time you say that, by the time you actually make that statement, you've already lost about three-quarters of the people because they're not understanding what that means. So the best way to look at this is that this is the probability for at least a few inches. And by a few, I mean two or three. And the word at least is in there. Okay. I remember back, maybe it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever the last time we had that, when we had that big snowstorm a couple of years ago along the coast. And a couple of days before, I used the map and had a 70, 90%. And, it says the probability for at least three. And, it was very clear what I meant by it. And somebody, then ripped me saying that you're only forecasting for 3 inches. I said, no, you don't know how to read a map is your problem. So this is WPCs, which, by the way, they have expanded the areas of both the low end and on the low end and the high end today. So in the lighter green, they have now included all of the coast. It's a 10 to 30% chance, up from zero. A 10 to 30% chance for at least three, and then just go inland. And in the darker greens, and you've got a 30 to 50% chance, and they've already highlighted in the blue is a 50 to 70% chance, and that's what you see in eastern West Virginia, western Virginia, the western half of Maryland, and into south central and southwest parts of southwest PA. So
And there's a little blue, Joe, just over eastern or northeastern Pennsylvania, just aside to the west of New Jersey. Do you see
yes,
that?
I do see that. And let's see. Yes, I do see that. And that's 70 to 90%. And I suspect, because this is in the day 6 forecast, so you know what? If WPC is looking at this in their day 6 forecast and seeing something, I think there's a probably fair degree of confidence that there's something's going to happen. Okay, and tomorrow we'll be in the day 5 period, which will make it even better. Um, and the Reuben Fairchild Award tonight, by the way, goes to Reuben Fairchild for asking the question
About the
about
sun
about
angle.
the sun angle. You know, so we'll leave it at that. But look, it's there, and WPC is talking about it. And as you say, in terms of their the liquid precip forecast, they do have an inch. They have an inch to an inch and a quarter from Long Island down through, say, New Jersey, south of Route 78, to southeastern Pennsylvania, and then down the Appalachian Mountains into western Virginia and western North Carolina. The purple, inch and a half plus for coastal and southern New Jersey, and points south and west. I got to think that there's probably could be some, they're looking at that maybe with the inch and a half, and maybe there's some rain issues that are going to be going on at least for a while. But you know what? Not going to tune that now. But you notice the wet system here overall, and this goes to Monday night, so it doesn't include the next one that is going to be that's going to come in behind this.
The
So
next
this
one is the one that big blob of purple and red down over Louisiana and the central and western Gulf.
Yes, that's this stuff over here. And we're talking about inch and a half to some areas in the 2.5 to 3 inch zone in southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and Alabama. In the west, because these systems keep coming in off the Pacific, so there's getting waves of rain from San Francisco northward to Seattle or just west of Seattle, we're looking at several to, in some cases, many inches of rain over the next 7 days. And we've got the half inch sort of meandering all the way down to San Diego. And this is all on top of rain that's already fallen. Also up and down the Rockies and in the Wasatch, we're seeing a fair amount of precip there. So the only place maybe that doesn't get very much is the northern plains and on up into the western Great Lakes. And again, this takes us to next Monday evening. The system that's behind this one for this weekend will take care of that. We'll change all that tomorrow when we look at that map. On the satellite, Joe, Mr. Upper Trough continued to cause some problems today with clouds, although I did notice that at some point during this afternoon there were some breaks of sun that did manage to develop in a few places. But this trough, this whole trough still has yet to get out of the way. And actually, there's going to be a weak low that's going to form off the North Carolina coast that's going to run out to the east. That's not going to have any impact. And there's going to be another one that's going to form on Thursday that's going to move out. And as you said, that is probably, that's all part of this equation. These lows that keep forming in the subtropical jet and moving on out. I think you can take that as a long-term uh, indication of what the pattern is going to be like in the coming weeks and maybe even for the next 2 months.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct on that. And in fact, I just took a look at the 18Z GFS for the system that is targeting Sunday. And, you look at the upper air on that particular system. If you go to the 500 millibar height anomaly.
Which I'll do right now. So just give me a second so everybody can see what you're talking about. One moment here. We'll load it up. And so this is what? I'm sorry, 18Z Sunday, you said? Sunday afternoon?
18Z run. And this would be for, let's say 6Z Sunday, 12Z Sunday.
Okay.
The upper air does show a negatively tilted trough. In other words, if you think of a pendulum, the pendulum is swinging to the right. That's a negatively tilted trough, but it is not an overly impressive trough. And in a way, you want that. If you don't want something too bullish, because if it was really bullish and coming very close to your vicinity, that could be enough to pull in enough mild air to change precipitation over from snow to rain. It's not particularly impressive, but it is enough, just enough of a disturbance passing to our south to allow for enough cold air to hang in long enough to allow for some snow. Now, Reuben Fairchild is asking on the chat board, well, how come the system you're talking about for early next week can't be snow too? And the reason is that if you look at the system coming up behind the weekend system,
which I'm going to point out, by the way, is this one out here, this upper low that is in southern Nevada, actually, Nevada, Utah, Arizona there, right in that where all the state boundaries meet. So that's the system that's going to come out for Tuesday. Go on, Joe.
Right. That, as compared to the system we're looking at on Sunday, already, how many contour lines is that, Joe? I'm looking now at 0Z Tuesday of next week, the 19th of January, and this is a cutoff system.
One, two, three,
four, five. This darn thing. All right, I don't want to get into trouble in YouTube first of the year, but this darn thing is already so tightly wound up, and has already peaked, so to speak, in strength. It's already occluding to maturity. And now take a look as we move along into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Where's it going? It's going up to the Great Lakes.
And the reason why is if the first system goes out, there's a ridge that pops up between the two. The second system is so deep, and it actually phases with a northern stream shortwave that's up there in the Dakotas. That system is so deep that it forces a ridge to pop up in between. If we were going to get this, if you wanted this to be further east, that's got to be you got to have a weaker system. You got to have a much flatter ridge in the east, which is what you have ahead of the one for Sunday. But you lose that. The first system goes out and does what it does, and a ridge pops up in between. Well, guess what? That's and you've already got something that's phased near 100 west. It's got to lift up toward the Great Lakes, which is what it does.
And the cold air that we have to work with on Saturday, Sunday is modestly cold air. It's not frigidly cold. It's really, as I said yesterday, it's just cold enough. Just you don't. I mean, it's cold enough to allow for the precipitation if you have just the right storm track to have the precip fall as the white stuff, as snow. But as we move along into the beginning of next week, as that ridge builds, and it does build quite significantly over the Northeast down the Atlantic seaboard, the temperatures start to warm quite rapidly. Now you have this monster moving through the Great Lakes area. We're into a fierce south-southwesterly flow aloft. The only thing that can happen is that the precipitation is going to come in the form of rain, because all of that mild air is being forced in or forced up into our area. So yeah, so we have just enough cold air to make the snow lovers perhaps happy, perhaps, again, if it takes the right track over the weekend, and then it'll all be taken away from us if that storm, the next storm early next week, tracks into the Great Lakes and helps to pull up all of that very warm air.
And I made the argument yesterday that if the pattern if the pattern were not changing, which it is, okay, and has been since after Christmas. Remember, it's a long, slow, grinding process. Um, this window that has opened up for this weekend would not have happened. So that's one point I want to make. The other point is, as far as the second system behind it, this is a powerhouse, and this is going to actually, I think, complete the pattern change process as it lifts up into eastern Canada and just gets involved in this big vortex. And while that's going on, you're going to have pressures rising across Greenland and across all of the Arctic. So you're going to have the whole jet basically displaced south. And I think it's going to probably be locked in for a while. Certainly, if you look at this run of the GFS, you would argue that point. So that follow-up storm is actually very, very important with regards to how how we finally get to where the pattern is going to potentially lock in for a while. So you might have to sacrifice the fact that it's going to the lakes and that it's going to be, a screaming wind. But a screaming wind and heavy rain and probably another round of flood watches that politicians will ignore. But I had to say that after yesterday. So, but first things first, I'm going to bring up the GFS, and here you have, as Joe pointed out, it's modest cold air that we have. In the meantime, the first low goes out. It's dirty cold air, as I like to put it. Then that goes away. And then you got that's the system on Thursday. Is actually one tonight. You can see it there. One tonight, tomorrow morning. That's off the North Carolina coast and goes goodbye. Then this one goes in. Then there's like a bit of a cold front that pushes through on Saturday. It's up to the north with that high. It just sort of merges with the air mass of the south. And you're right. It's marginal cold air, but it's actually of a higher quality cold air because it's coming down from eastern Canada, and I would think it should be just enough to have to put snow in the forecast here. And again, this run, we're still dealing with these sort of half jogs further south and further north, but the takeaway is the fact that the models for days and days and days now have all been locked into this system. They've all had it, and again, the confidence should be high. It's a question ultimately of how this all sets up in the short range, and we'll get there in a couple of more days. And there's your next system, which is already, by the way, Joe, it's a 981 low in southwest Oklahoma. I think that's an 81 or a 91. I'm sorry, it's a 91. The earlier run had like a 980 low in Tulsa, okay, which is something you don't see very often. And that runs up toward the Great Lakes, but there's so much tropical forcing ahead of it. Look at the gradient, the south-southeast gradient that sets up with a big high that's off of Nova Scotia for Tuesday. I mean, it's going to blow away, and the models are bringing up heavy rain and probably some severe weather across the southeast with this.
Yeah,
Look at
yeah.
that. I mean, that's impressive.
And I'm surprised. You can here we are going into the early part of January, and used to be at this time of the year, the folks over at the Storm Prediction Center could take a little bit of a break, but from what we're looking at long range, they may not be taking a break for too much longer, because this is a very volatile type of weather pattern that's taking shape for the nation's midsection, at least as we move into the second week of January.
Yes. We've got a bunch of super chat hits I want to acknowledge, starting with from the first one, Bogies Bees. Joe, Bogies Bees hit super chat tonight. Thank you, Bogies Bees. David Fuller wishing us a happy new year. Thank you for hitting the tip jar. Tom Cantino, oh my, thank you so much, Tom. Coffee fun for the week, gentlemen. Love the old school analysis. Thank you, Tom. Most appreciated. I know we break your chops, but we like doing that. Brandon Doherty hitting super chat as well, and Art Sai, Joe, hitting super chat. I love the way you guys explain the computer models to us. The other channels make a snowstorm sound like it's the end of the world. And yeah, you know what? And that's a good point, Art Sai. It boggles my mind, Joe. The non-comprehension that people have. I mean, those of you who follow me on Facebook, when I put my posts up, and I always write something ahead of time, it's at a point where I can't, I can't write anything without somebody finding something wrong with it, and making vast assumptions about what I'm saying. I think what I say when I write it, Joe. I'm sure you've read the headline stuff that comes up out on Facebook. I mean, usually it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear and straightforward. There's no wall of panic that I'm creating. I just don't get it. It's just amazing how people
It's
read into things that just aren't there.
it's called trying to raise the ratings, and this is why also in recent months you've seen on more than a few weather TV news programs, when they get to the weather and they get to the 7 day, something new has been added over the past year to the 7 day, and that is the red alert, or the warning.
Oh,
They purposely.
down here, it's first alert.
Yeah,
It's
first.
the
Well,
first
yeah, it's up here.
alert.
Up here too. Up here on CBS, First Alert Weather. They've got the yellow alert. They've got the red alert, and sometimes you could see these alerts going all the way out to like day 6 and 7, as if they were able to tell you with some certainty or surety. For example, I've never seen them put a red alert or a yellow alert on the 7 day outlook and take it away, because they realize that it's not going to live up to expectations or whatever. But that's the way that they do it. They do it to alert you. No, they're not alerting you, and they're not trying to forewarn you. They're trying to scare you. That's what they're trying to do. And if you get scared, you know that what you're going to do is you're definitely going to tune in later on the 11 o'clock news, and again tomorrow. You definitely want to tune in, because you want more details and more information. That was never done in all the years. I think the 7 day, actually, it originally started as the 5 day outlook back in the early 70s. And then we transitioned during the early 2000s to the 7 day outlook. And I don't think all through that time we ever actually highlighted. What I used to do when I was on television, if I saw something that might be interesting, I just put a question mark. And it became part of my lexicon or whatever. Oh, Ray just put his question mark up for day 6 or day 7. I didn't make the box any special color. I didn't say that there's an alert or an advisory or a warning or whatever. I just said, well, we'll just watch and we'll see. And now, of course, you've got, they highlight and they say there's an AccuWeather warning,
Right.
first alert, yellow alert, or whatever.
Question.
And that's what they do. That's what they're doing.
The question mark was code for people who watched me on a regular basis. Because if Joe put the question mark up, Okay, that means he's thinking about something.
That means, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and just the,
yeah, and I don't mean that to be. I'm not trying to be funny here, but I would put the question mark up when I thought that there was a chance of something going to happen, but not necessarily anything big. It just was the fact that there was a chance of something going to happen. Now, I might verbally say that, we might need to watch this particular day, and then have the question mark there about whether we'd get precipitation or not. But you're right. It's all nuts now. It's just so out of control, and it's all nuts. I just resent. I just really resent the fact that I get lumped into that same barrel of crap that everybody else, with regards to what everybody else is doing, and I'm so out opposite of that, and so people just kind of make assumptions that I'm doing the same thing they are, and I'm not. I'm very specific. I'm very direct. You ask me a question, I'll give you an answer. And Jess Harden, by the way, asked a question because he's looking at this Thursday system that's moving across the Gulf states, or will be moving across the Gulf states. And the NAM does actually have, because he's in northern Alabama, the NAM does have a little blue in there for northern Alabama and also for North Georgia, which I'm excited about. I think there's a shot here, okay, for you. A lot is going to depend on just how cold the how much cold air gets sort of wedged down into the southeast and into the mountains with this because the system's not particularly well developed, which kind of works in your favor because if as Joe pointed out, sometimes if they're overdeveloped, you get too much warm air that gets involved. I think you got a shot here. I don't know if I specifically would go with the idea, NAM's idea of the shot, and certainly the higher elevations in northern Alabama because there are mountains in northern Alabama. Might wind up seeing something with this. So we'll keep an eye. And it's got some dark blue right over me for Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Joe, if you were down here, you would be amazed. Almost uniformly, the posts here on Facebook by locals when it comes to snow is all happy, positive, I can't wait to see it. It's so beautiful when it snows here, and it really is. When it snows here, it's gorgeous with the mountains and everything. But just the overall, you don't get and I understand it. In the metro areas, that 90% of the people are gonna, they can't stand it. It's a huge inconvenience, et cetera, et cetera. And I get that, but it's nice here to be so far, to be way away from that sort of stuff, and to just have people have this sort of really positive view of the beauty of what it is when it snows. And just I will tell you that uh, depending on how this system for Sunday turns out, for Saturday night and Sunday, and I just got the GFS here. I want to see did anything. I mean, the GFS doesn't quite do much with this, at least on the radar view. But I guess I wouldn't be too. Probably more in Tennessee and to me than it would be to you. But you see how that just sort of get the low to do what it does there, and then pulls out of North Carolina. It's right off the southern coast of Delmarva, and then starts to push slide to the east northeast from there. And that's the NAO at work, by the way. It tries to go northward. It only gets so far, and then gets forced to the east. And this is where you oftentimes can get big snows in southern New England, in the Hudson Valley, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Long Island, southeastern New England, down to Maryland and Delaware. So, it's all the pieces are here, but we just got to, as again, any kind of subtle changes here could make a big deal, and I don't think we're going to really know too much more about this until we get I think Wednesday we might have a pretty good idea of whether where bigger snows might set up. And I'm thinking, Joe, in terms of maybe some early numbers, we could probably start throwing them out on Thursday. That kind of sounds okay to me.
well, yeah, yeah. Sometimes you can go a little beyond that 72 or 84-hour mark and get
Well,
a
72 hours would be Thursday, so
right,
roughly.
right. That'd be
Um,
Thursday morning.
Yeah, I want to
Which one
look
is he
at
Thursday?
totally see the 24-hour snowfall. I was just looking at 4 hour if they have. He doesn't have it. Oh, accumulated precip. I'm just kind of curious here for the second system, how much rain it generates, because we should acknowledge that this could be a problem. So the GFS is showing, I mean, areas of 2 inches plus, and we've seen the last three systems that we had all had significant upside to what the models were showing. But we're talking 2 inches plus. So if we get this snowfall on a ground that's probably relatively still saturated, and then have the snow melt and maybe another 2 inches of rain plus, um, that could be a problem on Tuesday.
I'm trying to figure out who Tom Contino is making reference to. He's talking about Henry. You know who Henry is, Joe?
I think so. Henry, I think Margate. Is that how I say his last name?
He said, yeah, it's very funny with Tom is that
Tom
he's
has a
actually
personal relationship with every weather person up and down the eastern seaboard. He knows them. He must, he must. Well, if you got if you've got, was it Pluto TV, or if you've got what's the one I have, um, Freevee, and you can watch virtually all the television stations around the country. I mean, Tom, do you watch like every weathercast up and down the eastern seaboard? I'm just kind of curious. Because we know that there's a certain channel based in Atlanta that apparently watches is lurking in the background. They're lurking in the background even as we speak, Joe.
I mean, Tom's saying, anybody know what Henry is saying for this one? I really want to know what Henry is thinking. And then, like a little ways further down, he says, Henry had a terrible year last year. I've lost all faith in him. But if you've lost all faith in him,
Then
then
why?
why are you interested in why are you interested in what he's saying now?
No, I just.
It's like a baseball fan. You have a good player, and
It's
you,
like
you're
being a
saying to
no.
yourself, like, well,
It's
I've lost all faith in him. I'm not gonna bring him in out of the bullpen.
right.
He had a terrible year last year.
It's like being a Jet fan. It's like being a Jet fan,
Yes,
Joe. Every year we're going to the Super
I saw
Bowl
the greatest.
until they play the
You
first
know,
game.
I saw the greatest cartoon for all of you who are Jet fans out there. Here's a guy. He's in heaven. He's standing in front of the podium. There's St. Peter with the big book, and he's looking down at the big book, and he's saying, "According to what I have here, you should be in hell. However, I see you also are a Jet fan, so I'll count that as time served."
Oh, good Lord. All right. Well,
You think maybe we should just cut this right now as New Year's Day, and we'll move on to tomorrow, where we'll look almost equally confused and.
well, I mean, we could. I mean, unless you got something else you want to talk about.
No, I have nothing. I have zilch. I know that you were hoping for your special
Yeah,
surprise.
you know what? He messaged me. Well, I'm not going to mention his name because now I'm mad because he messaged me about coming on tonight about an hour. I'm sorry, I just kind of screwed up the screen here. Just give me a second. Oh, okay, it came back on its own. Didn't have to do anything. Um, he messaged me about coming on, and I told him, well, 7:35, and he said no, he couldn't be here till 8 o'clock. So I said, okay, I'll send you the link, and it's now coming up on 8:20, and he's nowhere to be found. So maybe we'll try again tomorrow or Wednesday. Um, be interested to see what his perspective is on all of this. But for now, I'm not gonna say his name. And so there. But I am going to say Johnny Quest's name, Joe, because Johnny Quest just banged the tip jar, and he said with this snow and rain, it should help the drought that is still going on in the Mid-Atlantic. Yeah, yes, and the drought on the in the Mid-Atlantic is waning, has waned to a large extent, but definitely by the time we get through next Tuesday, there will be no drought. Okay, so we'll, for sure, regardless of what the snow does, in terms of the liquid precip that's going to fall between both systems in the mid-Atlantic states, there's no, the drought should be pretty much gone. How about we shoot for 200 likes because we're at 180?
Sure. In fact, I'll tell you what. In order to try to get the 200, let's list again all the people who gave
And do you have Briller
who get
Jeopardy, by the way?
yeah, I have
You
Briller
have it?
Jeopardy.
Okay, so we could do that.
So let me just get to the list here of Briller Jeopardy comments, of Briller Jeopardy questions, I should say. For all of you who cannot live without Briller Jeopardy. I mean, this is most people. You know what? They don't watch this show for the weather information. They just hold on until the end.
Well, everybody wants to play.
I know, including other networks that watch us too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, what is the average high temperature?
Go ahead.
What?
No, I'm sorry. You were going to do the super chats, I thought.
Well, since we're doing Briller Jeopardy, I'll do that first.
Okay, so let's do Briller Jeopardy. I'm sorry.
That should be worth, and all of this should be worth at least another 20 likes to get us to 200. What is the average high temperature in January? The average high temperature in January for the following 5 cities, starting with Dallas.
Dallas. I'm going to say, well, you know what? Atlanta's like 54, so sort of on the same latitude. I'll say 56.
Close. Not close enough to say that a snake could have bit you, but still quite
close. Okay. Let's see if anybody on the chat board. Steve LaPointe just said 13, but I'm thinking that might be an answer to somebody else's question.
Steve LaPointe said 13. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so it may not be related. So we're talking Dallas here, folks. And I said 56, and Joe says it's close, but it's not, it's not close enough that a snake would have bit me. Mr. Ruben Fairchild says 69.
No.
Chuck Cardillo says 59.
Chuck Cardillo is in snake territory.
And Jason Fox said 60.
No, a little bit too far.
So that means we have to go less. And Maggie P.
Maggie P. got it with 58.
58. Okay, very good.
And Frank R. too had 58. How about the Mile High City, Denver?
I always have trouble with Denver because they could be 71 minute and 7 below the next. I'm going to say 43 for an average high.
Not quite.
Not quite. Too low or too high?
Too low.
Too low. Okay. So let's see. Let's see.
A lot of people on the chat board are talking about temperatures in the 50s. I don't know if this is Denver, Colorado, folks.
Denver, folks. Let's see what Maggie P has to say because she lives near there. Chuck Cardillo says 58. Desperate House Daughter. I like that. That's up there with Bella Lugrisi. Welcome to the chat board, Desp House Daughter. 52. Adam Lowe, 51. Joe Pan, 55. Harold DeCaro, I think that's way off at 67.
Lord Kate got it, though. Lord Kate.
47. And we also got 200 likes, which is what the bell was.
We now have 200 likes.
Thank you.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
On a holiday night, New Year's Day night, we got 200.
Well, the liquor's worn off.
How about Detroit, the Motor City?
Detroit. Okay, let's see. The
average high temperature in January.
Well, Chicago was 33 yesterday. I'll say 30. I'll say 34.
A little too warm, Joe.
A little too high for Detroit?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I put Detroit up on the board. Jason Fox is 32. I guess some people are still putting Denver numbers
Jason
up.
Fox hit it right on the nose.
Oh, very good.
32.
I wasn't sure. I know Chicago is 33. I wasn't sure if I should go one higher or one lower. And then they have Lake St. Clair over there, so I just didn't know whether. So I went one higher, and I should have went one lower. Okay.
How about Fred and Ethel's favorite city that they'd always wanted to visit?
Oh, you told me this the other day too. I forget what.
Unfortunately, Lucy didn't hit the right
All
get
right,
enough
Honolulu.
on the Freddie Fillmore show. 80.
Oh well, they were so much for that one. What was it? 80 what?
Well, it was in the 80s.
82?
80, 81.
81? Okay. Well, we'll give it to everybody then. All right, what's the next one?
Houston.
Houston. What was Dallas?
Dallas was 58.
58? So I'll say Houston. I'll say 62.
You were correct in going up above Dallas, but you didn't go quite high enough.
Okay.
Or above enough.
All right, so let's put Houston on the board here so everybody knows what we're talking about here. Michael McGuire, you're too high at 79. You might want to wait till April or May for that one. Maggie P, 78, too high. Oh. Lord K, too high. 64, says Brandon Doherty.
Brandon Doherty hit it, 64.
Very good.
And there's a bonus question. The average high temperature in January, this is the bonus question, for Fairbanks, Alaska.
Oh, God.
The average high temperature for Fairbanks.
Boy, that's a tough question because, if you always hear about the fact that, okay, they're 50 below or whatever they are. You don't often hear about whether, the high for the day on a morning where they've been 50 below. I'm trying to think if is it a negative? No, I'll say all right. I'll say -1.
Joe, again, snake country.
Really?
Yeah.
-1 is snake country. Okay, so Fairbanks at -1, which means we're either at 0 or -2 for the average, correct?
Right.
Okay, so I'll say, for the love of all the winter weather and snow lovers who want that air to come down into the United States so they could have humongous heating bills, I will say -2. Oh, I should have went the other way. So it's the big goose egg?
It's the big goose egg, 0.
Imagine living in a place where your average high is effectively not even a positive number.
I remember one night Tex Antoine was talking about, weather patterns or whatever, and he referred to Fairbanks, Alaska, as the Fort Knox of our weather eventually. And he said they had a high of -34 and a low of -47. And if you thought that with those kind of temperatures it'd be too cold to have snow, they had snow and 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Nice.
That's how. And back in the day, they used to actually have a commercial in the middle of the weather forecast, and if you throw it to the commercial promo or whatever, we'll be back with the complete forecast right after this or whatever. But that was how he finished part 1 of his forecast with the weather in Fairbanks, Alaska. You don't see too many weathercasters today locally talking about the weather in Fairbanks, Alaska, but that was the kind of stuff that set X apart, among other things, from the others.
Yep, agreed. All right, the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast as always is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned at the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. Tempest is an affiliate of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Use the coupon code IWANT@weather-station for anything you buy there. And if you do, you'll get
10% off. And before we close out the night, let's thank again Norm Roberts, Johnny Quest, Brandon Doherty, Art Sy, Tom Cantino, David Fuller, and Bogies Bees for hitting the super chat tip jar tonight.
Okay. All right, so folks, we'll be back tomorrow night at the usual shopping time, 7:35 p.m.